Hey, welcome back to Silver Bull channel. Welcome back, Silver Bull fans. Today we're going to talk about democracy and why I believe small government is better than large government, particularly when you're talking about a one world government. If we go back to ancient Greece, where democracy started, they wouldn't recognise our democracy today. Back then they had what was called direct democracy. That meant that people directly were involved in the political process. They, all the citizens, who admittedly were limited to males and non-slaves, all the citizens had a chance of being elected to the lawmaking body. What happened is they had a ballot, and out of that, 500 people were selected by random chance, and it was those 500 people that would suggest the laws, and then everybody would vote on those laws. So it was direct democracy in that way, that every single citizen had one vote, one voice, and you had just as much chance of being part of that 500 as anyone during that year, because it was selected by random. And it would be very unlikely you'd go your whole life through living in Athens where you weren't selected to the lawmaking body at least once in your life. So a very interesting system and real democracy. Today what we have is a representative democracy. I vote a local member in, and he's supposed to represent my views, or at least the views of his local community. Obviously, this system has become totally corrupted, which is probably what these Occupy Wall Street protesters are complaining about, is that because to be a representative you need so much media attention and so much money to spend on these things, they've become enslaved to people who have the money and to corporate interests, and hence it's more of a courtocracy rather than a representative democracy. I don't think the answer is socialism. I think the answer is a move towards direct democracy. We certainly have the technology to enable that to occur. I'm not suggesting that on a national scale, but certainly on a local scale they should start there in the form of a local government. When we think of Rome and Greece, when were these empires at their height? And it was when they were smaller. The Greeks were great as small city-states. You know, you're talking about cities of no more than 30,000 citizens. That's when they were great. In the case of Rome, it was greatest as a republic, a single city-state. And by the time of the birth of Christ, Rome reached its zenith, and then we essentially see a slow decline with some periods of some expansion. But, you know, apart from the conquest of Dacia, where they raped another nation, destroyed it for its mineral resources to try and keep their empire going, it really was a declining proposition, and so-called barbarian nations came in and butchered what was left of the empire. And that's been a history throughout. That's been a lesson, throughout history, and it's one that really places like the United States need to learn from. The United States has, in its history, pushed to be more federal. All right, to be more about being a nation, the United States, rather than the United States of America. My argument is for the United States to really find its roots in that, it has to go back to the state level. Each state looking after its own things. Go back to the fact that it's a United States. And really, you know, butcher the federal government to its bones. Only then can they once again start their rise back up the scale. But instead, you know, that's not what we're sold. We're sold from the world politicians that the bigger is better. The bigger bureaucracy, the better. Certainly that's what they're trying to sell in Europe, for example, in Brussels. And that is not what we're seeing. In Greece, them adopting the euro has rooted their economy. And same with Portugal and Italy and Spain. I'm not saying their economies were so great beforehand, but what I am saying is by linking themselves with economies like Germany, you know, they just can't work. And it's a combination of insanity and arrogance to try and do so. And that's the same arrogance we have coming for those who push for a one world government. Who seem to think bigger is better. All the world's problems can be solved if only we were all united and stuff like that. Well, that's not true, and history teaches us that it's not true. Often the most successful societies were the ones that were the smallest, looking after their own needs, culturally homogeneous, you know, homogenous, you know, that achieved great things. I mean, Athens, you know, it was often seen as the foundation of Western civilization, did that as a tiny city-state, not as the empire, you know, and many of the great things in history have been achieved by what we would consider small, not large.
To understand that the game is up, and yet in their desperation to preserve their dream, they want to remove any remaining traces of democracy from the system. You talked about the fact that it was a lie to believe that the nation state could exist in a 21st century globalised world. Well, that may be true in the case of Belgium, who haven't had a government for 6 months, but for the rest of us, right across every member state in this union, and perhaps this is why we see the fear in the faces, increasingly people are saying, we don't want that flag, we don't want the anthem, we don't want this political class, we want the whole thing consigned to the dustbin of history. Budget first, before they'd be allowed to have a general election. Just who the hell do you think you people are? You are very, very dangerous people indeed.